So I have a question for you. What do you think is the most unreliable AI tool out there? No, you know that now there's a dime a dozen. Everybody has an AI startup, and there's a new tool every day. So from all of those, what do you think is the most unreliable?
I'd have to go with AI detectors, Carlos. I
AI
hate to say
detectors.
but I'd have to
AI
go with AI
detectors, folks.
detectors.
We're gonna be talking about AI detectors today. Do they work? Don't they work? Or or to what extent they work or not? So I have a story for you. So I don't know if you recall, we had a prospect client, and they came to us, and they have like a very matter of factual information, but they were very adamant that we needed to use an AI detector, and I think it was GPT zero or something like that, and they want us to hit certain particular score. They were very worried that our writers would use AI. And we didn't end up working with that client because I think there wasn't a good fit. But then what happened is when I looked at the rankings after the one of the latest updates of 2023, this particular company, even though they were super adamant about non AI content, after the update, they still got hit pretty badly.
Focus on the wrong
So
thing, right?
yeah, so where I'm going with this is like, is this even relevant? Is this even important? But anyway, so you have tested how many yourself, Rick? Six
Oh,
plus,
I've
10 plus.
easily
That
used 10 or 15 different detectors over the past year.
Yeah, and we always come to the same conclusion: they're not reliable. Like it's hard to say they don't work, but I mean, to what extent do they work? And can you trust what they're telling you and then change direction or accuse your writers of be using AI? I mean, what are your thoughts on this topic? It's a very hot topic, lots of debate around it. We always get asked by your clients, how do you make sure that your writers are not using AI? But I don't know. I love to hear your thoughts on this. And I'm sure
Well,
the audience also would love to understand how to think about this.
before we, fully trash AI detectors, let me tell you, they work pretty good. It's actually pretty impressive. Um, Problem is, for this type of thing, pretty good isn't good enough. Right now, you have some of your top detectors identifying true content accurately more than 90% of the time. That's pretty impressive, especially given the advancements in AI to humanize its outputs so that it's a little less identifiable. So, that one that like slips through from time to time, not that big of a deal. The problem, Carlos, is the false positives, and that's not something that they've been able to wrangle just yet. And even if you're running at 90% there, or let's say a 10% false positive rate, that's certainly enough to give you doubt that if a tool is flagging work as AI, that is this something you should really go back and potentially can a writer over. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with it. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, that's really where the problem is. They do a pretty good job identifying most AI content, even content created by GPT-4. The leading models that are getting better at outputting content that's pretty humanistic, um, but not quite there as far as minimizing those false positives, which is bad news.
Yeah, I think I did a webinar with Mike King from Apple Rank. He's a thought leader in the whole AI or kind of thing on content marketing, and he does a lot of SGE research, whatnot. Anyway, and he put the American Constitution to one of these detectors, and it was detected as AI. So yeah, you're right. The false positives is their main drawback. I think we did some tests where we had some of the writers almost like writing by hand, stuff by hand, and then they were still called out as AI. So they're unreliable, especially in false positives. So they give out a lot of wrong signals. I think if you are doing like 100% pure AI, it will detect it. But the problem is if you're not, it might still call it as AI. So then what do you do, right? And then you get nervous and you start thinking, okay, I'm going to get penalized by Google and all that stuff. So anyway, I don't know, for some of the of you that don't understand how they work, but they're trying to reverse engineer what the AI or the LLM is doing, and also they look for signals of, it's called burstiness. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, it's burstiness. It's looking at the pattern of sentence length and sentence structure because AI can get into habits. And it doesn't vary its sentence length and structure much, where human writing does. Um, but they've even gone further than that now. So it used to be mostly based on the predictability of the next word in any string of words and things like that burstiness. But now they're even looking at patterns of words to look for identifiable patterns throughout text because AI is susceptible to falling into those patterns where humans aren't quite doing that as much. They're looking at stylistic and semantic analyses, and it's as AI LLMs have gotten better, so have these detectors. They've kept up, but the problem is they have to get to near perfect before they're really a useful tool, right? And it's just not there. Not to the
Yeah, and
point
I
where you
think,
can make informed decisions and take action on what they're telling you.
yeah, I think they're always going to be behind because all these models, first of all, the companies are developing the LLMs are huge and super well funded, whereas the detectors are usually startups and the smaller companies. So they're always falling behind. And they're always, some of them are using, they're borrowing their technology. They're using the same LLMs to detect the LLM, the same LLM. So it's kind of a chicken and egg, or a never-ending chase, right? They're always going to
Chasing
be
the
behind.
tail.
Yeah, chasing the tail, right? So they're always going to be behind. So I don't know what the future for those tools is. But if we cannot rely on those tools, so what we can rely on, Rick? Uh, what do people do to make sure that, to detect AI? Like if they want to detect AI, like,
Well,
we
let's
know it's very clean. Like, AI is very clean. It's very uniform. It feels like, it's like when you are, there are certain foods, like, I know, like frozen foods or certain foods that, they have the particular taste to it. So that, to me, um uh, that's the one of the signals of AI. Like, it does have this flavor to it that you can detect it, but it's hard to articulate what that flavor is, right? You have to see it, and then it's so uniform and so clean that it's almost too perfect. Like, okay, this is just, sounds a little bit natural because it's so perfect and so clean. But beyond that, and for people that are not really experts, at content writing, so what are your tips for that, Rick? Like, how are you
well,
detecting?
we still, our writers are not allowed to submit any content. They can use AI to help them create content, but they can't submit any words that were generated through an LLM. So we're still having to police that. And because we can't fully rely on the detectors, I've put a process together, and the goal here is to reach a reasonable level of certainty, right? There's always going to be some shade of doubt. But when a client comes to us and says, hey, pretty sure this is AI, that triggers a process. And anyone can follow this process for the most part. First step is we run that content through an AI detector, and then about four or five others too, to see the results that we get, to see if they align. Because not every AI detector is built using the same model or weighting the different things the same way. So you will get different results, but you can still get consistency. So try that first. Then read the content yourself. Like you said, Carlos, it has its own unique flavor, right? It is almost impeccably written. Whereas, some of our best writers, Carlos, get a little wordy here and there or go off voice just a bit here and there, or screw up commas left and right, right? That's why we have editors. They're not perfect. They're really good with voice and value and getting great information in there, but the writing, they can use little tweaks here and there, but something about that AI writing is just clean. So if it has that clean look with similar sentence structure, common words, you'll see, you and I were just talking about GPT's favorite words, meticulous and delve and embark. There's a couple of others that I won't put them in anything I write anymore because it's
Yeah.
just so common to see. ChatGPT loves delve. Delve. It's in almost every article you'll find that's written by ChatGPT. There'll be a delve
We should
somewhere.
do a top hits, top GPT hits, or top AI hits, like with a list of most common used
Right?
AI
I would
words.
love to see how many times the word delve appeared on the web a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And now look today. And I bet it's probably 1,000 times more. But yeah, you can look for terms like that. You can look for the sentence structures that are preferred. Uh, GPT loves it. It can't seem to create a title that isn't phrase colon phrase. It doesn't like sentence titles or question titles. It's almost always phrase colon phrase. At the end of the intro, it's always, not that this is bad practice, but it will always say in this guide or in this article, we're going to this. In that very last sentence before you get into your first H2, ChatGPT just does that almost every time. So there are some telltale signs. Second thing, find more content that this writer wrote. It's easy for us. We have a platform, we have a history of what our writers have written. So start measuring other recent submissions to see if you're getting consistency there. Then, if it's somebody's been writing for you a long time, go back to pre-November 2023 and take a look at what they were writing then. And if you see a stark difference in their drafts, in their voice, in their grammar, their punctuation, the flow and logic. If it's a stark difference, pretty good sign this person picked up an AI. Got into a bad habit at some point over the past year and a half. So we take all of those steps and we look for a reasonable level of certainty before we will action it. Action it being letting that writer go permanently from our site. But we have to be fairly certain, so we'll check 10, 15, maybe even more pieces to make sure that, yeah, look, there is clearly something going on here. In a date where the writing abruptly changed, consistent AI detection throughout all these pieces, plus that eyeball test, because we've seen so much AI that a lot of us can pick it out now. So take a look and read through it yourself and go, yeah, this is AI. And we let that person go. But unless we reach that level, it's a warning. If this is happening, we don't want to make a decision that impacts somebody too quickly on a maybe, on a 70-30 or 80-20 kind of certainty level. And I fear that people out there running content for their business who maybe don't work as many writers and projects as we do, are like, what do I do? This writer just submitted a piece to me and I think it's AI. What do I do? And they may be making decisions using an AI detector and one AI detector alone that's really impacting somebody. That's kind of scary, So
Yeah.
yeah, I highly recommend follow that process. Do your due diligence. Give the person the benefit of the doubt, because I don't know that they're even hitting 90% or 10% false positive rate.
Yeah. So I think then what we're saying is, like, don't put as much, like, use them, but be careful and don't put as
Yeah.
much weight on them as maybe some people may want you to think that you should put some more weight on them. So just use it as one of the signals, right? And you have to do some manual due diligence, unfortunately. But then that takes me to another question for you. So are we really looking at the right thing here with these AI detectors?
No.
Right? You're already answering, but is that the right question? Is the right question, is this AI or not AI? Then if that's not the right question, what is the right question, Rick?
Is it good? Is there value in your content? Are you serving your audience? Are you providing them value? Are you being helpful? Are you writing it for them and not to manipulate search engines? It doesn't matter if your content is just drip. Well, it does matter if it's dripping with AI because you can lose a little audience trust. Even if the content's good, if they can identify that it's AI, that might not go so well for you. But as far as search engines concerned, it doesn't matter. Is it good? That's all that matters.
Yeah, and you and look, Google has said it. Their stance on AI is really like, yeah, just create helpful content. How doesn't matter how you create it. Create helpful content. That's what we want. And of course, they penalize AI, but when it's used to manipulate rankings. So people that want to create 1,000 articles, 100,000 articles, publish them automatically. No review, no new information, no information gain, no editorial, nothing. They're trying to manipulate the SERPs. So that's what Google is punching. So, and I know there's still confusion. I'm surprised that there's still confusion, but I know there is confusion. That people are super scared of using AI for their content process because they think they're going to get penalized. But really, and they want to police the creators, say how you're using AI or not. I think it's healthy to make sure that you're getting what you pay for, and also you don't let your writers or your creators to just focus on AI. But really, what matters here, the question is this content not even good? Is this content great? Because good is not cutting it. It's not good enough anymore. It's got to be great. It's got to be stellar. It's got to be outstanding. So that's really the question. And I know, Rick, you had a great example that you wanted to show me, or show the audience, where you produced an actually really good piece of content using purely AI to prove the point that the piece was really great, but was created by AI and was deemed 100% AI by a detector. But when you look at the piece has a lot of things that are valuable. So show us.
So we've been talking about this for a while now, Carlos. Like
Can you make it a little bit bigger? I think it's going to
the
be
actual words.
very small and yeah, and maybe it's just me and I'm old and can't see, but maybe your audience might want to see a little bit bigger to make sure they can see the text.
So
But
it's no secret. I've been working on all of these resources that we've talked about in recent weeks, and this is one that I've put together this week. And in preparing for this segment, I started thinking about, I know we're going to at some point start talking about it's not about AI, it's about the value. I thought, well, what if I show somebody? So this is a resource we're going to be putting out about the content calibration phase. This is the fourth phase in our onboarding process. It's a fairly brief resource. It just kind of describes how calibration works, gives some tips for calibration. But if you really go through this, like you'll see, this stuff comes right from my experience in going through a ton of calibrations and running working sessions. These are like right here, rather than giving verbal instruction to your writers when they're doing the calibration orders, let the project and content brief guide them fully, because that's what you're doing in calibration. You're testing out your resources. So this is me in here, but truth is, it scored 98% AI. I'll tell you right now, it's almost 100% AI. I created it using AI, and I am not worried one bit about this being AI content because there's a right way to do things, Carlos. And I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough. I promise I won't make you see the entire process, but this is me yesterday building out this resource, having a back and forth conversation with ChatGPT, giving it feedback so that it is writing my thoughts. This is just working on a title and a subtitle, but as you go down, you can see here I'm giving it context because I wanted to create a how it works section, but it needs to know about the phases leading up to calibration. So given that context, and then I'm outlining how I want it to break it down. So it starts with the working session, moves on to this, that, the other thing. So that's all coming from me. So it took that information and put it out for me. And then I don't like it. So we're doing this back and forth. Again, here I'm still not happy and I'm giving it more information like this is really what I want to do. So now we got it. We'll skip this part because I ended up nixing that too. But you can see all this back and forth at one point, and this is the most valuable part of the resource here. It's these tips. These are just learned from having done this so many times. This is where your content gets that expertise and experience, right? This is my expertise and experience in here. But first, I gave to get my mind thinking. I told GPT, "Why don't you kick it off with your ideas to help get my brain going?" I described what I wanted to do. Take a look what I put out here, Carlos. Like, there's nothing wrong with these tips, but they're generic.
Yep. That is entirely true. And one of the things that I've seen with AI content is if you are not an expert in on the field of or the topic, you're gonna be impressed. You're gonna be, oh wow, this is great piece of content.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're an expert, you're gonna realize, well, this is generic. This is 1 inch deep.
Right.
Right?
It's all vague and
So
yeah, that's a good
it's
idea.
vague. It's very general. So yeah, it doesn't really. So that's the other thing with AI content. If you're not an expert on the field or on the topic, is gonna be you're gonna be fooled easily. But if you're an expert, you're going to be able to realize, this is very vague, very high level. It might be AI or not.
Yep.
I mean, it's not helpful. So that's another tell sign. But I think what you're saying is like you compared like one where you worked like really hard back and forth with the tool and probably took you, I don't know, hours, and another one where you just prompted it and took you
I'll get to that
2 minutes.
in a minute. This is where I gave it all the information on the tips that came from my experience. And then I had it mix it in and redo that list. So that this tip list that I showed you here that has all of my thoughts was written by AI, but not until I gave it my expertise, my opinions, my advice. And then so I didn't have to worry about wordsmithing it so much, like I can write, but like this does save a little bit of time. And in combining the skills of ChatGPT with my experience and expertise, you end up with hopefully something a little bit better than either of us could do on our own. So yes, so I finished this off, and ultimately where I ended up is an AI written but extremely valuable EEAT based resource that I'm proud to put up. Now, just real quick, this will only take a minute, just to illustrate how knowing what you're doing with AI is important. I went to I like Claude, so I'm not trying to show that Claude is terrible here. But I went to Claude and I gave it an overview of that document, and I asked it to create it in one prompt. Mm-hmm. And it did, and it did a relatively good job. Here's the outcome, and I went through it, and I highlighted anything that I was going to highlight things that are vague too. I should have done that, but I just highlighted anything that was inaccurate or misleading.
Well, that's a lot of highlighting there.
That is a lot of highlighting. And this is why AI content is a problem. This should be why you're worried. If you are publishing AI content, that single prompt that's done by a user who has no more insight into the topic that they're generating than the guy down the street, you should be worried, right? This is no good. This is not going to provide any value to our audience. Did a decent job on this section, but for the most part, no. This is nowhere near ready to be published. It needs a complete rewrite. So this is where the problem lies.
Yeah. So I think, folks, that the message here is, look, it's not so much about is this AI written content, but the question is it helpful? Does it have original information? Like you did with your tips, right? That only because of your many years of experience doing this.
Yeah, those
right?
are my thoughts and ideas in there. Some might agree with them, but
and we'll publish a piece of content, and we'll be totally confident that it'll do well
Mhm.
because it has a lot of editorial work behind it, which is what you did going back and forth with the tool. Now, comparing to the other one where you just put a prompt, is decent, and that's the thing. We're not looking for decent content here. We're looking for outstanding content. We're looking for something that is great because that's what Google and what's that what you really your audience is looking for. So I think, folks, if we can leave you one message, look, don't focus so much on whether something's AI or not. Spend your energy and your efforts and your brain cells on testing if the content is actually good, regardless of how it was created. So I think that's the message. That's the punchline of today's episode, and a great way to finish it there. So anyway, if you have any questions about this topic, feel free to reach out. We'll be more than happy to help you to think this through, and give you our thoughts. There is an article we published a few months ago about content detectors. We'll probably link it again in the episode for people who want to revisit it. But yeah, great topic, and is a pleasure to discuss it with you, Rick, as always. Okay, well,
And
that's
you.
it for today's episode. So thank you, and yeah, happy weekend to everyone.
Bye, everyone.